hit record. Okay, so I'm Joan again, and welcome to the 5-day Learn to Read Music Challenge. So glad you could join me today, and let's just go ahead and jump right in. What I'm going to do is review what we learned yesterday, and so if you look, we learned to read on the treble staff yesterday. Now we're going to just ignore this part right here. We'll add that part tomorrow. But we did learn to read on the treble staff yesterday, and we learned that the bottom line is E, and then the next line up is G, middle line is B, next line up is D, and top line, of course, is F. So one way to remember this is every good boy does fine. And then, of course, we've got our spaces, which is F, A, C, E. Now, the spaces of the treble staff are very easy to remember because they spell face. So everybody has a face, so that is the easiest thing to remember. So we've got every good boy does fine and face. So if you can remember that the bottom line is E and the bottom space is F, you can find your notes from there. Now we also discussed the C method for finding, for learning our treble staff. Now the difference here is that you just locate all the C's, and then from there you can locate whatever note that you're trying to find. And so of course we would start with middle C. Middle C is written on a ledger line just below the treble staff. So this right here is middle C. And then we've got third space up is C, and then 2 ledger lines above the treble staff is C as well. So that's one way to look at it. Of course, it'll make better sense. Tomorrow we're going to tie it in with that bass staff. So let's go ahead and dive on forward. I'm going to turn this video on right here, and if I can do it, let's see. Sometimes these things give me trouble. I'm going to go ahead and turn this video off. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive right into today's lesson. Today we're going to be learning our left hand. Now remember, on day 1 we found the C position. With our left hand, you find the C below middle C. So here's middle C. You find the group of 2 black notes located below middle C, and you play those with your 2 and 3. And then you slide to the nearest note to your left. Now put your pinky on that, that's your 5. And then your 4 will be on D, your 3 will be on E, your 2 will be on F, and your 1 on G. So that's C, D, E, F, G. Now I'm going to teach you the C major chord. The C major chord is made up of C, E, and G. To play these in your left hand, you'll need your 5, 3, and your 1. So your 5 will be on C, your 3 will be on E, and your 1 will be on G. So to play the chord, you will play all 3 notes at once. I don't know if you can see that very well. Okay, so now you take your hand away from the keyboard. Now find the C chord again. Remember, it's C, E, and G. Now I have my keyboard marked here so you can easily see what notes we're playing. Okay, now what is a C major chord made up of? It's, of course, C, E, and G. Now today we're going to learn the G7 chord, because the G7 chord in C major, your three major chords are going to be the C major chord, the F major chord, and the G7. So if you're playing any song in the key of C major, it's going to go to usually all three chords. Now, with the exception for today, we're using a 2-chord song for today, but for the most part, you're going to use the C major, the F major, and the G7. So the G7 chord is made up of B, F, and G. Now remember, we had our 5 on C, our 4 on D, our 3 on E, our 2 on F, and our 1 on G. Okay, so we're going to leave our hand just like this in the C major position, but now we're going to take our 5 and we're going to stretch that down to B. We're going to keep all these other fingers right on these keys. And so since our G7 is made up of B, F, and G, now we'll just play the 5 on B, our 2 is going to stay on F, and our 1 is going to stay on G. Okay, so now I want to go over playing the C major chord and the G7. You're going to be doing a lot of this, especially if you learn songs by ear. If you, listen to a song, whatever key it's in, you're going to go between usually 3 major chords. And so in the key of C major, you'll go between C and G7 a lot. Practice going back and forth between C major and then G7, C major and then G7, and then C major and G7. Now there is one other chord that is a major player in C major. Normally, when you play a song, even if you're a beginner pianist, you will use what we call the 1 chord, which in our case is going to be our C major chord, our 4 chord, which is F major, and then our 5/7. So I've already taught you the 1 chord, which is going to be your C major chord, 5 on C, 3 on E, and 1 on G. Now the G7, you just stretch your 5 down to B, and you keep your 2 and your 1 on G. Okay, so let's go back to our C major. Okay, now the F major is our 4 chord. So that is going to be F major chord. I did not include that in the workbook because the song that we're learning is only a 2-chord song. But I want you to have all 3 chords so that you can use them as you pick out other songs. So the F major chord is made up of F, A, and C. Now, in our left hand, we played the G7 by just stretching our 5 down to B, and then keeping all the rest of our fingers on the same keys, and just playing the F and G. So we're going to do basically the same thing. We're going to keep our 5 on C, 4 on D, 3 on E, 2 on F, and 1 on G. So now, since the F major chord is made up of F, A, and C, we can easily keep our 5 on C, 4 on D, 3 on E, 2 on F, and 1 on G. And just like our 5 stretched down to B, we'll keep our 5 on C, but now we'll stretch our 1 up to A. And then just play the F. That's an easier way to do that rather than picking up your whole hand and moving it, getting confused and trying to find where you were. That's the easiest way to do that. So you've got your C major chord, which is C, E, and G. That's your 1 chord. Now here is your 4 chord, which is the F major. So you just stretch your 1 up to A and add that F with your 2. That's the same as doing the F major chord, which is F, A, and C. You just keep the C down at the bottom. So let's practice going back and forth between the C major chord and the F major chord. And just remember that you keep all of your fingers on the same keys, except for the F major chord, you're going to move your 1 up to A. So C major is C, E, G. Now our F major is C, F, A. Now let's go back to the C major, C, E, and G. Now F major, C, F, A. Now back to C major. Now back to F major. Okay, now let's throw in the G7. Okay, now if you pick out other songs such as Jingle Bells, they usually have the 1 chord, the C major, they have the G7, and they have the F major. So let me show you. It goes something like this. Of course, Jingle Bells. So all that was just C major. Now, there's our F major. So there you go. There's your 3 chords. F major, C major, G7. So that's how, you will use those 3 major chords, picking out any of these songs. So let's circle back to our C major and G7. If you look in your workbook, you will see that I've placed Mary Had a Little Lamb on the treble staff in there. It's on let's see, we can do another one here. This one will probably be better. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play through, and we've got each measure. Now in day 4 of our workbook, I've already got all of these out, all the notes plugged in. And I have got even the finger numbers plugged in, I believe. So what we're going to do is go over that, and we're going to take our left hand that we just learned today. So we've got our C major chord and our G7. That's the only 2 that we're going to use in this song. That's the only 2 chords. So I want to go ahead and go over it, and let's see, let's go over just the first measure right here. Of course, there's 4/4 time signature, so you've got 4 beats per measure. So, and a quarter note gets 1 beat, so you've got 1, 2, 3, 4. So here is your first measure. And of course, they've got the bar line there as well. So, in this first measure, that's our first measure. Now, Does the C major chord go with that, or does the G7 go with that? That sounds right, but let's try the G7 and see. I think the C major would go better. So you can mark a C major. C and then M-A-J for major. Okay, now what about the second measure? It's quarter, quarter, half note. So it's E, 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 bottom line E. Does C major sound good with that? Yes. But would G7 sound better with that? Let's try it. No. So the C major would sound better with that. Yeah, that works. Now let's go to the third measure, which is D, D, D. Space below the treble staff, which is D. Now would the C major chord sound good with that? Let's take it from the beginning. No. So now let's take it from the beginning again, and let's try the G7. Yes, that works. So you could take that and just write a G and then a 7, G7. And then we've got the 3-5-5, this next one, so that is bottom line E. And then the next line up is what? Every good boy does fine, so that's bottom line E and then G. Quarter, quarter, half note. Okay, so let's take it from the beginning again. G7. Now, does G7 sound good with this 3-5-5? No. Now, let's try C major. Yes, that sounds good. So you can write C major again, right above that. Okay, and then we've got, 1, 2, 3, 4. The first 4 measures. Now we've got the last 4 measures of the song. Now these 2 measures right here are exactly like the beginning. So you can literally just copy that because it's the exact same. So now these last 2 measures right here are what is different, and that is space below the treble staff, which is D, 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 E, bottom line E, D, and then C. Now on this D, D, E, D, do you reckon that would be a G7 or a C major? Let's try it. D, D, E, D, C. Let's try C major. Well, with the C, the whole note C right here, middle C, the C major chord goes with that. But what about this? I mean, it goes okay. But let's try the G7 and see if that would work better. Yes, so the G7 works much better there. So now let's take it from the top and let's play through it. So we've got our C major chord, bottom line E. Now we're going to go to our G7. Now back to our C major. Now G7 again. Okay, so that's just a very, 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 very basic song. But I felt that it was important to do this song because it shows the absolute structure of music. There's many other songs we could have done as well. Beethoven's Ode to Joy, if you know the right hand, basically the same thing. You've got a 2-chord song. You've got C, E, G, your C major chord. You've got your B, F, G, your 5/7. So if you can pick out the melody with your right hand, as long as you know what key you're playing in, if you're playing in the key of C major, you're going to visit the C major chord, and of course the G7. Those two are a given. And then, of course, other times you're going to be visiting the F major chord, which is C, F, and A. So you've got your C major chord, your F major chord, and your G7. So let's go over this again. You find C, below middle C. Put your 5 on C, 4 on D, 3 on E, 2 on F, and 1 on G. Now your C major chord is C, E, G. So it's 5, 3, 1. And your G7 is going to be B, F, and G. So you leave all of your fingers here, right here where they're at. Now you just stretch your 5 down to B, keep your 2 on F and your 1 on G. That's your G7. Now let's go back to our C major chord. Okay, and then let's find our F major chord. So we're going to keep our fingers right here. 5 on C, 4 on D, 3 on E, 2 on F, and 1 on G. Now the F major chord is F, A. Now we're going to move our 1 up to A and keep our 5 on C. So let's go back and forth. We've got our C major, our G7. Now let's go back to C major. Now F major. Back to C major. Back to G7. And then let's go back to C major. Okay. So here we are. Let me go ahead and turn this off. Okay. So I'm going to go on to questions. Does anyone have a question for me? Go ahead and type that into the chat box. Okay. So I went ahead and I've typed into the chat the link to my online piano studio. Feel free to browse my courses. I've got levels 1 and 2, and I've got several different courses as well. I have a 25% off this week only. It ends tomorrow night at midnight Central Standard Time. Of a 25% off of all of my paid courses. If it does not automate, whenever you go and you click on it, you're in the checkout. If it doesn't automate, it will ask you for a promo code, and you can type in challenge right there. And I have some free lessons posted there as well. So let's go on to questions. Does anyone have a question for me? Okay. Okay. Well, if there isn't any questions, let's see.